I'm driving through downtown Kingston, heading to a place most people pass without ever stopping. Tour buses don't linger here. Most travel videos give it 2 minutes and move on. A few drone shots, a list of names, done. But inside this circle is the entire story of Jamaica. Its rebels and its prime ministers. Its poets and its reggae royalty. Two cousins who split a country in half. And a mass grave from the worst night in modern Jamaican history. A night most people under 40 have never even heard of. By the end of this video, you'll know why this one park explains everything about who we are as Jamaicans, and what it's quietly asking of those of us living abroad. Start with the only woman among the 7 national heroes, Nanny of the Maroons, a military leader the British Empire could not defeat. From the Blue Mountains, she led free Africans, Maroons, in a guerrilla war so effective that the most powerful empire on earth eventually had to sign a treaty with her people. Today her face is on the $500 bill. Jamaicans don't even call it a 500. They call it a nanny, Samuel Sharp, a Baptist deacon in Montego Bay, who organized what was meant to be a peaceful strike in 1831, enslaved people simply refusing to work past Christmas unless they were paid. It became the largest uprising in Jamaica's history. The British crushed it and hanged Sharp in 1832. His final declaration, he would rather die on the gallows than live in slavery. Within 6 years of his execution, slavery in the British Empire was finished. The strike they killed him for helped end it. Paul Bogle and George William Gordon. In 1865, Bogle, another deacon from St. Thomas, led a march on the courthouse at Morant Bay. People were starving. The land system was rigged. The courts were rigged. Bogle marched. The response was one of the most brutal crackdowns in colonial history. Bogle was hanged. Gordon, a mixed-race member of the assembly who had defended the poor, was hanged with him, on evidence so thin it caused outrage even in England. For 100 years, official history called these men criminals, rebels, threats. Today, Paul Bogle's face is on Jamaican currency, and both men rest here, in the nation's most honored ground. Every person in this section of the park was hunted, executed, or condemned by the state. Criminals first, heroes a century later. Marcus Garvey, the man whose ideas reached the whole black world, died broke and alone in London in 1940, and Jamaica didn't bring his body home until 1964, 24 years late. Remember that pattern. Jamaica always remembers its own, but Jamaica remembers late. Hold on to that thought, because the next story is the one almost nobody talks about. From above, you can still see it. Look at the shape of this park. That oval isn't a coincidence. For the better part of a century, this was Kingston Racecourse, horse racing, betting, champagne weekends, the playground of colonial Jamaica's elite, while the great-grandchildren of enslaved people, a few streets away, couldn't legally claim an acre of land for themselves. In 1953, the British renamed it George VI Memorial Park, named for a king, a man who never lived here, never worked here, never bled here. Then Jamaica became independent, and the new nation made a decision that tells you everything about how this country thinks. They didn't bulldoze the racetrack. They didn't erase it. They buried their heroes inside it. The space built for the oppressor's leisure became the most sacred ground in Jamaica, the National Heroes Park, and every monument you're about to see sits inside the outline of that old colonial track. Like the country planted its freedom right in the middle of its captivity and let it grow. Before I show you the next monument, watch this. Every day, soldiers keep watch over this park. The ceremony is precise, deliberate. It's Jamaica saying, the people resting here will never be unguarded again. Hold that thought, because this story is about the night nobody was watching. To tell it, I have to take you back to 1980. If you're Jamaican, you already felt that. If your parents or grandparents lived through it, you grew up hearing that year spoken a certain way. 1980 wasn't just an election. It was the year Jamaica came closest to losing itself. Michael Manley's PNP, Edward Seaga's JLP, two visions for the country, and a war in the streets between them. By the end of that year, more than 800 Jamaicans were dead. Most of the people who died in 1980 were young men. But the story Jamaica struggles hardest to look at is about its grandmothers. On Slight Pen Road in Kingston, there was a place called the Eventide Home, a public shelter for the elderly, the poor, people with nowhere else to go. The women's ward held the most vulnerable people in the entire country. Women in their 70s, 80s, 90s, women who had worked their whole lives, higglers, domestic workers, mothers, and ended up with nothing but a bed in a government home. Women like the ones who raised us. In the early hours of May 20th, 1980, while they slept, the ward caught fire. The building was old, wooden. Kingston's own fire chief had already called it a tinderbox. It went up fast. The official toll was 145 women, though in the chaos of that year, even the dead were hard to count. Think about that number. Think about how few buildings anywhere in the world have ever taken that many lives in a single night. It was widely believed to be arson. The telephone lines to the building had been cut before the fire ever started. One more act in the political warfare consuming Kingston that year. To this day, no one has ever been held accountable. No trial, no conviction, no answer. The country was so deep in crisis that even this got swallowed by the violence around it. Jamaica did do one thing. A week later, on May 27, 1980, the Gleaner reported what happened to them next. Their remains, 145 women, were placed in 26 wooden coffins and buried together in a single grave, right here in National Heroes Park, in the most sacred ground the nation has. And on the day they were laid to rest, Prime Minister Michael Manley declared a national day of mourning. A whole country grieved. They lie in the same earth as Nanny, as Sam Sharp, as Paul Bogle. The country placed its most defenseless citizens beside its most defiant ones, as if to say, we failed you in life. We will not forget you in death. And then, slowly, quietly, we mostly did. There's no national day for Eventide, no school lesson. Ask 10 Jamaicans under 40 what happened on May 20th, 1980. See how many can tell you. I'm not telling you this story to reopen wounds. I'm telling it because a memorial only works if somebody stops and reads it. We don't even know all their names. But these women had names. They had children, and many of those children had already gone to foreign, to England, to Canada, to the States, sending money home. Some of them lost their mothers that night from an ocean away. If that's your family, if you carry a piece of this story, the comment section is open. Their names deserve to be spoken. The guards change every day in this park. The least the rest of us can do is remember who they're guarding. But Heroes Park doesn't only hold Jamaica's grief. It also holds proof of how far this island's hand has always reached. Because resting here among our national heroes is a Cuban general. Lieutenant General Jose Antonio Macheo. They called him the Bronze Titan. Antonio Macheo, son of a free Afro-Cuban family, one of the greatest anti-colonial military commanders in the history of the Americas, a man wounded in battle more than 20 times, fighting for Cuba's independence from Spain. So what is his monument doing in Jamaica's most sacred ground? Because when the fight got too hot, Kingston is where he came. Maceo lived in exile, right here in Jamaica, and part of Cuba's independence struggle was planned from this city. Jamaican soil sheltered a revolution that wasn't even its own. Cuba never forgot. This bust was their thank you. 100 years before anyone used the word diaspora, Jamaica was already what it still is today, a place revolutionaries leave from, a place exiles shelter in, a place that remembers them after. Freedom in the Caribbean was never a solo project. It was a group project, and this park keeps the receipts. And there's one more set of receipts here, the Jamaica War Memorial, for the Jamaicans who fought and died in the 2 world wars. Thousands of young men from this island crossed the ocean. to fight for an empire that still ruled them. They came home to the same colony they left. Many of their children became the Windrush generation, and some of their grandchildren are watching this video right now. From London, from Birmingham, from Toronto. Jamaica's story has never fit inside Jamaica. It never has, and this park proves it.
I know that you've been here before. It's different this time. You have me on your side. Follow me, I go show you the way.
The heroes' monuments get the tourists, but buried in this same park is something I'd argue no other country on earth has. Louise Bennett Coverley, Miss Lou, the woman who took Jamaican patois. The language children were beaten for speaking in school and put it on stage, on radio, on television, until the whole island stood up straighter. Her husband, Eric Coverley, rests beside her. Dennis Brown, the crown prince of reggae, the singer's singer, the voice even Bob Marley named as his favorite, and laid to rest beside Dennis in 2020, Toots Hibbert, the man whose record Do the Reggae gave the entire genre its name. The music Jamaica sent around the world is literally named after something Toots said. Coxsone Dodd, founder of Studio One, the producer who built the foundation that ska, rocksteady, and reggae stand on. Edna Manley, the mother of modern Jamaican art, sculptor of the nation's image of itself, wife of Norman, mother of Michael, a dynasty carved in stone and bronze. Capo, Malika Reynolds, the self-taught painter and spiritual leader whose work hangs in the National Gallery. Ranny Williams, the comedian and broadcaster who made the whole island laugh. Herb McKinley, the Olympic medalist who lit the path that leads all the way to Usain Bolt. Stop and think about what you're looking at. Jamaica buries its poets, its singers, its comedians, and its painters in the same ground as its generals and prime ministers. Because in Jamaica, culture was never decoration. Culture was the revolution. Miss Lou fighting for patois was Paul Bogle's fight, continued in words. Dennis Brown and Toots carried it in sound to every corner of the planet. This little island's loudest weapon was never a gun, it was a voice. Now for the two men whose rivalry built modern Jamaica and nearly broke it. Norman Manley, Rhodes Scholar, brilliant barrister, founder of the People's National Party, the man who led Jamaica to self-government. Then Sir Alexander Bustamante, labor leader, showman, founder of the Jamaica Labour Party, the first prime minister of independent Jamaica. Lady Bustamante rests beside him. Two parties, two visions. Decades of rivalry that hardened into the green and orange that still divides communities today. The rivalry that fueled the bloodshed of 1980, the same violence that touched Eventide. Here's the part that still stops people. Norman Manley and Sir Alexander Bustamante were first cousins, family. The two halves of Jamaica's great political war came from the same blood. This is Norman Manley's tomb. Look at it properly, not from 1,000 feet up. Up close, one man, one stone, one name. A short walk from his cousin, a short walk from his son, because Michael Manley is here too, Norman and Edna's son, the man at the center of 1980 itself, and Sir Donald Sangster, the Prime Minister who served only weeks before he died, Hugh Shearer, Edward Seaga, Michael's great rival, the other half of that terrible year, Howard and Ivy Cook. Every war Jamaica ever fought with itself ends in this circle, in the same quiet ground, green and orange, cousin and cousin, rival and rival, together. Whatever side your family was on, it ends here, at peace. Maybe that's the lesson we keep refusing to learn while we're alive.
I can make a story about it. A 360, so you can see everything. I'm gonna just Yeah.
Oh, they just capture everything and then
Yeah.
just
Just
take the hands off it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I respect.
Now rise with me and look at what Jamaica built around its dead. On one side, the Ministry of Finance, the Ministry of Labor, the Ministry of Education, the government these heroes made possible, standing watch over the people who paid for it. And on the other sides, schools. Woolmer's boys and Woolmer's girls, older than the United States itself. Kingston High. Thousands of children grow up in classrooms looking out at this circle, whether anyone has told them its stories or not. There's Sabina Park, where Jamaica's sporting glory plays out. Emmett Park beside it. And look, far on the horizon, Norman Manley International Airport, named for the man whose tomb you just stood at. The airport your parents left from. The airport you land at when you finally come home. From up here you can see the whole thing in a single frame. The dead, the government, the children, and the runway, the way out, and the way back.
Your aura pass me by, losing balance. What if we run out of time and second chances, empty-handed? I wonder, would you love me better if I go? I'm not home.
Garvey was forgotten for 20 years before Jamaica brought him home. Bogle was a criminal for 100 before he became a hero. The Eventide women were honored, and then forgotten within a single generation. The pattern is clear. Jamaica always remembers, but Jamaica remembers late. So if you're watching this from Toronto, from New York, from London, ask yourself, who is keeping your family's story alive right now while it still matters? While the people who lived it can still tell it? If you have a story connected to this park, a grandmother who knew Miss Lou, family touched by 1980, a relative who left through that airport and never got to come back, put it in the comments. I read all of them, because that's how stories survive. Somebody keeps telling them. The guards change every day at Heroes Park. The least the rest of us can do is remember who they're guarding.
I'm not home. I wanna know, can we trust this that's about to let us know?